shows the Father, and it suffices us. Jesus saith unto him, Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, Show us the Father? Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me. Or else believe me for the very work's sake. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also. And greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. Lord, thank you for this opportunity to preach your message this morning. Give me your words to speak and guide this sermon in the direction you wish it to go. In your name, amen. You may be seated. I'm dearly missing my reading glasses this morning, not because I actually need them that badly, but my ADD really needs something to mess around with. Something to do with my hands while I'm preaching. I've got like 3 of them up here, but I'm assuming juggling would be somewhat distracting.
I could throw stuff at you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, though. You're welcome. Book of John 14 and 8. Philip saith unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it suffices us. Suffice, and it will be enough for us. We're starting out this morning, just jumping right into the message with a, mostly because Grandpa isn't here to re-preach it after I'm done. So I really need to actually stay on point today.
I'll do it for you.
Don't worry, I believe you. We're starting out today with the correct attitude immediately from our dear friend Philip here. He's talking to Jesus and he just says, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. God, it will be enough for us. That is adequate. That's all we need. That's the proper attitude. Conditionally, as Jesus points out in the very next verse, he saith unto him, Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? All you want is to see God, and you are talking to literal Jesus Christ. And you've been with me for over a year now, and you still haven't got this? It's interesting to watch the apostles, I don't know if it's the right word, but fall in and out of faith. They appear to have had hills and valleys, just like all Christians. Times where your faith is really strong, and times where it's not so strong, when you've got questions, when you're not as sure. Because sometimes Peter's all, oh, you're obviously the Son of God, you're the Christ, you're Jesus. And sometimes don't do that, you can't do that, you're not allowed. Did you forget who he was? Did you forget who your roommate was? Literally the sovereign king of the universe. So it's just kind of encouraging for us to know that this is a problem for everyone throughout history, even those who get to see God face to face for all intents and purposes. He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, show us the Father? You've already seen him, it's me. So skip to verse 11. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me. Or else believe me for the very work's sake. If it's too much of a stretch for you, Philip, to believe me as God, then at least believe the works, the miracles you've been seeing. We've been running around all of Judea, healing the sick, taking away blindness, bringing people back to life. Your buddy Lazarus over there probably has a word or two to say on this. If you can't believe in me and my words, at least believe in what you're seeing. Verse 12, Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I shall do, he shall do also. And greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. It's particularly interesting to me this morning, obviously, that's why I'm preaching on it, that not only should you believe in the miracles I'm performing, but you will perform these same miracles. You will perform greater miracles than me. And that is, again, of particular interest to me. It is often one of the main pieces of evidence for the deity of Jesus that is often cited by us Christians is the miracles he performed. That surely someone capable of all these amazing feats had to be divinely inspired. And they're not wrong, of course, but as far as I am aware, there's only the one miracle that Jesus performed that we can, and that other people in the Bible specifically haven't. bringing Lazarus back is cool and all, but Peter pulled off the same thing, as well as Elisha, I think, in the Old Testament. All these healings are neat and everything. Paul can do that with his shadow. Like the prophets of old and the apostles of new, and even healing ministries today, if you believe stories on the internet anyways, they all equal what Jesus pulled off. And I haven't seen him split the Red Sea anytime recently. He obviously did. I know, that was God, not Moses. But the point is, the only thing Jesus does that you can't is forgive sins. The cross is literally the only miracle Jesus could perform that you can't. I don't really know if it's ever going to come up where we need wine and you can produce a bunch for us. It's probably not in this day and age in society. But all these works that I do, you will have access as well, Philip. And greater works than these shall do. That's an incredible promise, isn't it? If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. Any single thing. If I have faith like a mustard seed, mountains will move before you. This message is more or less pep talk more than anything this morning. I will admit it's very self-centered. This is more for me than you guys. I'm the one who has to stand up here on a bum foot, so I'm going to preach what John needs to hear. Y'all on your own. I think sometimes Christians, or John, will be fair and make sure we're only talking to the choir this morning, forget. Get amnesia, just kind of miss the point of what exactly this is. Because it really isn't, being a Christian really isn't a set of rules to follow, is it? It's not dressing up nice once a week, twice if you've got the right work schedule. It's not memorizing a bunch of old Jewish scripture. It's a one-on-one personal relationship. And it sure is a lot easier to say that than to practice it. I don't know if it's just me, but it's kind of hard to stay friends, I guess you would say, with an invisible, omnipotent energy being who created the universe. It almost sounds like a bad sitcom from Hallmark. But it's our life. It's what we claim. This is who we are, ain't it? And I think we sometimes forget that. How many times are you going to say sometimes in this message, John? Come on. That we've got a lot more going for us than just salvation. I don't think you can ever underestimate or ignore that. And that's certainly the impressive one. The fact that Christ saw all those dark, dirty little secrets that you have seen every mistake and screw up you've had in your entire life, and said, no, still worth it. Still going to the cross for you specifically. That is obviously the most impressive one. And again, the one miracle that is denied us believers. But I think there's a lot more at stake. That's not the right term. I think our pastor and his hobby horse of Christians living beneath their means is quite probably accurate. Genesis 19, verse 15, to flip back to the Old Testament again. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife, and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life. Look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. For reference and context, this is the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, where the man named Lot lived. Lot, a holy man of faith, according to the New Testament, despite some questionable parenting skills, perhaps. And he is in the midst of being evacuated from the city before it is consumed in fire and brimstone. And the angels are trying to convince him to flee to, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And this man, who was just divinely rescued from a city about to be nuked from orbit, has the gall to say, Oh, not so, my lord. Verse 19, Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto him, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing. Also that I will not overthrow this city, for the which thou hast spoken. Basically, Lot says, can't I go to like this small little town instead of out in the mountain and wild where there's animals and scary stuff? And God says, okay, I'll spare it. For your sake, Lot. You can go and live there. It's not going to get nuked from orbit. And that is remarkable to me for a variety of reasons. One is obviously, which really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, God keeps his word. This small little city, Zoar or Zyra, something along that lines, is spared. It is not destroyed, despite being very close geographically and culturally to the very sinful Sodom and Gomorrah. This tiny little city is spared. I believe it is even mentioned later in Joshua or one of the book of Kings, but don't quote me on that. I could be getting it wrong. I don't exactly have all the Jewish cities memorized. But this city gets spared because Lot asked. And that's incredible. He saved an entire city full of men, women, children, and animals, presumably. Not very many. It is just a little city after all. But it was still spared because Lot thought it was inconvenient to get eaten by mountain lions. Because a Christian didn't want to go camping, God saved an entire city full of sinful people. Isn't that remarkable? And to just continue the story forwards, Lot chickens out, the dirty coward that he is. And despite this promise from God, despite him very clearly saying, I will spare this city, Lot backpedals and flees to the mountains after all. And frankly, I think this was a mistake. The events that happened after this, which we will not go into, so this sermon says PG, those probably would not have happened if he was not off by himself in the mountain. I am aware that God, I just read it. I'm aware that God told him to go to the mountain to begin with, but Lot changed that. Lot said, I want to go to the city instead. And God said, okay, that's fine, that'll work. He could have gone to that city and probably been fine. I think it's also probably notable that when God said flee to the mountains, he probably didn't mean stay there. He probably didn't mean, okay, you're a hermit now and you live in the mountains. He probably meant go into the mountains until everything's not on fire anymore and then go find someplace to live that isn't Sodom and Gomorrah. But Lot presumably is a little freaked out by Sodom and Gomorrah going and is living continuously in the mountains to the point where his daughters who went with him see that there's nobody around and PG rating. The point is, if you ask God to do something and he says yes, you probably really should believe he's going to go through with it. Whether that means moving a mountain or sparing a city or whatever. Like if God's prayer and getting an answer to prayer is such a special thing, and I think so many times from a human's perspective, it feels like we get a no or a not yet. That does seem to be a very common answer. So don't squander it when you get a yes. For Pete's sake, Lot. Faithful man ye may be, but dirty chicken you are as well. Just, if God says yes, listen to him. And this is the same God we serve today, naturally, obviously, as you all know. He's the same today, yesterday, and forever. There are distinctions in our day and age that are consistently drawn between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God, and they're simply ludicrous. I think history tells us that well enough. He may be all about love and compassion in the Gospels, but anyone look up AD 70 and what happened to the people who killed God's son? Feels like there was a little bit of, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. And here in the Old Testament, God sparing an entire city that we know is sinful and was going to be wiped out, solely because someone asked him to. He's always been a God of judgment, of righteous fury, and he's always been a God of compassion and mercy and loyalty to those who worship him and follow his name. Book of Acts, chapter 12, verse 5, just kind of a reinforcing. Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison, and he smote Peter on the side. Boom! Wake up! Saying, Arise up quickly, and his chains fell off from his hands. And when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. And as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a damsel came to hearken, named Rhoda. And when she knew Peter's voice, she opened not the gate for gladness, but ran in, and told how Peter stood before the gate. And they said unto her, Thou art mad! But she constantly affirmed that it was even so. Then said they, It is his angel. All right, you're not insane, it's just his ghost. Don't worry about it. But Peter continued knocking. Guys! And when they had opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Just a good, faithful, early church body, the group of believers we all look up to, and they don't get it. And they are surprised when, dozens of people gathered together, praying incessantly, and God works a miracle. Well, what did you expect? Sometimes, as much as we idolize the early church, the church of the New Testament, I think there's almost as much love and admiration that should be given to the believers of the Old Testament. Because in some ways, they got it right. They certainly didn't seem to have as much of an issue with brashness and asking, if not demanding, things of God. David in particular, because we're always going to pick on King David. Psalms 83:1. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. Channeling his inner Peter, I suppose. Hey, God, I need you. That's fresh. That's very different than the prayers we give, ain't it? God, get down here. Maybe it's just because we have the Old Testament and know what tends to happen when he comes down and answers our prayers. And sometimes we're not terribly ready for him to say yes to us. Verse 2, For lo, thine enemies make a turmoil, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And again, I'm going to skip 7 verses here, because it's David listing the specific names and countries that are currently allied against Israel. This dude has the guts to go to God and pray, hey, these guys are going to beat us up, so here are their names and their addresses. Could you do something for us? This is a very confident man. This is a very confident Christian. I know not technically, because Jesus won't be born for 2,000 years, so technically isn't a follower of Christ. But this dude knows where he stands. And frankly, he knows where God stands. And why wouldn't he? This is the man who, as a young man, who was noted as being handsome, not a warrior, handsome, so girly, who went out and faced a 9-foot behemoth of a man, the greatest warrior in the land, who had an entire army cowering before him. And David went out and hit him in the face with a rock, because God said he could, and he believed him. That's the power, I think, of a confident Christian, of someone who knows where he stands with God, and how much he's standing by waiting for you. God, in a lot of ways, is not like anybody else you will ever meet in your life. He's a pretty distinct being. There's not a lot of them around, believe it or not. But in a lot of ways, he's a lot like you and me. He likes being talked to, and he likes being asked. There are a lot of chores and things I sure don't mind doing, but it is nice to be asked, isn't it? We dump the trash regardless. We take care of the church, but it's nice being asked. It's nice when people don't just assume you'll do them favors. It's nice when people request your aid. It feels good to be needed. I think that's universal. I think that's beyond universal, because I think God feels the same way in a lot of ways. Verse 13, Oh my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind. I don't know what that means. As the fire burneth a wood, and as the flames setteth the mountains on fire, so persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid with thy storm. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. Again, I just love this so much, because this is basically David saying, dude, it'd be cool. Come down and beat these guys, because it would be awesome, because it would glorify you. And even in the end, David, again, he's a man with a heart after God's own heart. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Come down and show them what I can. Again, the one miracle denied a Christian is forgiving sins, is turning, truly redeeming people. And that's what David's asking for his enemies, for this ally of pagan warmongers bearing down on Israel. And at the end of the verse, it's just, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Not only for my sake, yes, please, for my sake, please, help, but also for theirs. That they may know you, that they could understand, that they could see how great you are. Because that's what's awesome about the Bible. There are many awesome things about the Bible. But that's what's really awesome about the Bible and about true believers and men like David, is at the end of the day, they understand what is at the heart of it all. They understand that it's ultimately not about the enemies coming on Israel, and it's not about Israel. It's not about David at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's about God. Save your people so we can glorify you. Save these infidels so they can glorify you. Fight for your people. Do good for your people for the sake of you and your glory and your love and mercy to all of us. The best way I know to end on this, to summarize it all, is actually a tiny sermon from Tennessee Ernie Ford, of all people. Not going to patronize you and pretend like you don't know who that is. A majority of you anyways. And on his old gospel songs, a lot of the time he has like just mini sermons, like a paragraph long before several of them. And one of my absolute favorite is him telling a story of a father watching his young boy trying to move a large stone out of the garden. And the father going up to the young kid and asking, "Are you using all of your strength? Are you really exhausting all of your resources?" And the boy says, "Yeah, Dad, you can see, you know I am." And the dad says, No, you're not. You haven't asked me for help yet." That's about all I have today. Does anyone have a need or prayer before we close? A closing statement, something to chime in with?
Am I going to re-preach it?
Well, you can if you want to get up here.
Fine. Oh, I will.
I certainly don't mind the opportunity to sit down. It's appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, since the pastor ain't here, it's my responsibility, duty. Bring back up the opening verse, please. I always find this to be interesting. Very beginning, Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it will suffice." You ever thought, what was he asking? Because the first thing that comes to my mind is Jesus is wearing a trench coat, right? You can open up, pull out the Rolex watch, the Indian in the cabinet. Here's God the Father. See, I mean, what does it mean to show us the Father? What was he even asking? Philip's here is a good Jew. He's got the background. He's got the pedigree. How many people have physically seen God in the Old Testament? Not many.
I can only think of one.
Moses in the hind part of God, whatever that means.
Adam walked and talked with him. Jacob wrestled him.
But did he see him?
No.
Was he asking for God the Father to beam down in Star Trek language? Another thing to think about. How often does Jesus answer the question asked?
Not a long list.
It's not a long list, is it? But what was his understanding of Christ, the Messiah? I mean, Christ is not Jesus' last name, okay? We're coming to Christ is a title. Messiah is a function, is a job. So what was his understanding of who? I mean, if you read the Old Testament, which was what they had, and outside of Isaiah 53, but even then, where do you find that the Messiah, Christ, is divine? It's not a hard thing to find. I mean, most of our doctrine and theology is out of Psalms. Because historically speaking, it doesn't really tell you a whole lot about God. It's complicated. It's interesting. And I always marvel. If you're too far oneness and too far Trinitarian, I marvel at these answers. Because if you read them, you have to come up with, huh. And that is the answer, huh. Because everybody points right here, well, it says right here that Christ is God. Turn over to the next chapter and what do you see? Shows about the end time Jesus. Oh, I don't know that. Only God does. So your answer is, well, he's schizophrenic? 2, 1, both, neither?
The partridge in the pear tree.
Don't like math. I always argue with other people. Math is not real. Trust me, I watch The Big Bang Theory. Math is not real. But I want to know, what do you think he was really asking? But then let's go on. He's asking to see, how do we know you're of God? Let's use the word of instead. And the answer is fascinating. The answer is, of course I'm God. I can raise the dead. But you want to see God? You want to see the Father? You want to see Christianity in action? Forget about that. What will you do after me? We always want to make Armageddon and the coming of Christ's kingdom farther in the future than where you are now. When Jesus sent out the 70, not 12, the 70 disciples, they went out through the countryside healing and binding the devil and all that. What did Jesus say? I saw the devil bound and thrown out. The kingdom of God is not something in the future. The kingdom of God is now. You get all worried out. When the heck was the devil bound for 1,000 years, like it says in Revelation? Can you not bind the devil? Do you not have power to throw Satan out? Well, I can throw you out. This is close enough for binding and mighty in this vocabulary. You got the power to do it. And how do you really bind the devil? Is it as simple as a prayer? Well, I'm not going to diminish the power of prayer. But I don't think that's what it is. To bind is an action, is to do something. We read in the New Testament, Jesus said, you read the old scriptures and in them you think you have life because they speak of me. It doesn't matter what you know. You can know the Bible forward and backwards. Ask Saul, a.k.a. Paul, and ask him how saved he was. In the book of Revelation, since I keep going back to that, knock and what?
Shall be looking.
And I will what? I will come in and sup. I'm not going to come in and necessarily fix all your problems, give you money, give you whatever. This is my great promise to you. I will come in and have supper with you. I will be your friend. In the Old Testament, I want to get this right. I should write down sermons if I'm going to get one. Elisha was out being his prophetess, a propheter, being a prophet, and he's at war with the king of whatever it was. Let's call it Syria, because my chances of being right are 50-50.
War prophet.
And every time this evil king attacks Israel, Elisha goes, "Psst, hey king, this is what's going to happen. So-and-so is going to attack you here at this pass. So-and-so is going to be here at this river." And the evil king goes back to, hey, who's the spy here among us? There's no spy. That Isaiah guy knows what you whisper in your bedroom. Ha. Let's go after Isaiah. Makes sense. No, Elisha. Let's go after Elisha. Fine. You go after Elisha, and Elisha's buddies are out there with him going, we're surrounded by the enemy. Ooh, bummer. So what are we going to do? We're going to run, we're going to hide. Elisha goes, no, we're fine. Why? Why was Elisha fine? Although you remember your stories. Because behind the army was another army surrounding him. An army of angels and chariots and horses. So we end up smiting the king with blindness. And that doesn't deter. The king still comes up and asks Elisha, where is Elisha? And Elisha goes, hey, come on, come with me, I'll show you. And Elisha leads the whole blind army into the midst of Israel, surrounded by the Israel army, opens their eyes, and they're captured. And what does the Israeli king say? Can I kill him? Please, 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 can I kill him? No, there's rules to warfare. We're going to feed them. We're going to give them a nice little supper and send them on their way. And historically speaking, they do not attack again in that lifetime. The New Testament says, pray for your enemy, do good unto them that show you evil, be like heaping coals of fire upon their head. Which is not a bad thing, it really is. Matches weren't invented yet. It's the same story. The devil can't win if you show love and mercy and grace. There is no fighting among it then. There's no animosity, yeah, there's no angriness, no whatever you want to call it. So when the disciples here show us the Father, Jesus' answer is, wait till you see what I can do and what you can do through all the things that I will show you and know. So that's how you know there is a Father. Let us stand.